Hello, boys and girls. I'm so glad you could come spend some time with me today. I'd like to read this story to you. It's called The Ugly Duckling. It's one of my favorites. Under the thick green branches of a flowering bush, a loving mother duck sat gently on the 4 eggs underneath her. She sat patiently on them day after day and night after night. Until one day, she felt the warm little eggs beneath her begin to fidget and crack. She quickly got up and watched in delight as the little yellow ducklings worked their way out of the eggs, one after another, until they all were hatched. All, that is, but one. The one egg that was a little different from all the rest. The mother duck had known all along that this last egg was different than the rest of them. Still, she knew she would love each one of her children, no matter what they looked like. She knew that each one had the potential to become something very, very special. Finally, the big egg cracked open and out came the strangest little duckling you ever saw. He had a big head, big gray feathers, big feet, a big eyes, and a big loud honk instead of a quiet little duckling like quack. It was true. He was different, but his whole family loved him very much, and they all snuggled up together under the lovely flowery bush and fell asleep at the end of that long first day, happy and thankful for their wonderful new family. After a few days, Mother Duck took her 4 little ducklings out for their first swim in the large lake close to their nest. Everyone was very excited. Under Mother's watchful eye, the ducklings swam, played, and splashed about in the water. One even rode on Mother's back. They were all having great fun. It wasn't long, however, before an old Mr. Mallard swam by. He looked down at the newborns and smiled, but when he swam over to the little Grey Duckling, the old mallard quacked loudly and angrily at him until Mother Duck sent him away. The poor little Grey Duckling was scared and confused. He didn't know why that old duck had quacked so meanly at him. Mother swam over, gently rubbed her soft cheek feathers against the sad little Grey Duckling, then stretched out her wing and gently covered him under her soft, warm feathers. The little duckling felt better. While the ducks swam back home that day, a gaggle of geese watched them from the banks of the lake. They politely watched as Mother Duck and the small ducklings passed, but as the Grey Duckling swam by at the end of the line, they hissed and honked angrily at him, flapping their large wings wildly to show their disgust. Back at the nest, the little Grey Duckling didn't feel like playing with the rest of his brothers and sisters. Actually, he felt like crying. He was trying his best to be nice to all the other animals and birds at the lake. Why were some of them being so mean to him? As he was about to cry, Mother tenderly lowered her head once again and gently rubbed her soft cheek feathers against the sad little duckling, then brought him under her safe, warm, loving wing. That always seemed to make him feel better. Early one morning, as they reached the bank of the calm, still waters of the lake, the 4 little ducklings paused for a moment to look at their reflections. They had never noticed their reflections in the water before, and they all thought it was very interesting. As they looked, the Grey Duckling was amazed at how different he was from the rest of his family. They were a beautiful yellow color, but he was dull gray. They were small. He was big. Their beaks were a cute pinkish color. His beak was black. He just stood there looking at himself. Now he thought he knew why all the other animals had been so mean to him. You see, he thought being different was bad, even ugly. Because of this, he felt very, very sad. He thought he was an ugly duckling. As they swam along in the lake that day among the tall reeds and grass, the sad Grey Duckling couldn't stop looking at his reflection in the water beneath him. He didn't look up, not even once. When he finally did lift his head, he was alone. He had been paying so much attention to his reflection in the water that he had accidentally drifted away from his family and gotten lost. He didn't know where he was. He swam around quickly and honked as loudly as he could, trying to find his family, but it was no use. He was lost. He decided right then and there to never, ever look at his reflection in the water again. As time went by, the lost duckling grew and grew and grew. He never stopped looking for his family, and his family never stopped looking for him. One day, as he made his way around a large tree that had fallen into the lake, he looked up at the sky and saw a flock of beautiful swans flying overhead. He was amazed. They looked so beautiful with their tall, graceful necks, long, elegant wings, and brilliant white feathers. My, how majestic they are! How beautiful they are! How very different they are from what I am, he thought to himself sadly as he lowered his head back toward the water. As his eyes fell on the familiar waters of the lake, to his surprise he found right underneath him was a tall, beautiful white swan. He was so startled he tried to quickly move out of its way. Then, to his amazement, he realized that the beautiful white swan was him. He couldn't believe it, but it was true. He spread his graceful wings as wide as they would go. He lifted his tall, elegant neck as high as it would stretch, and he gave the loudest, swan-like honk that he could muster. All at once he knew the reason he was different was because he had never been a duck at all. He was a beautiful swan. His heart soared, and it wasn't long before his body followed. He flapped his wings and took off high into the air. However, even in the midst of his happiness, he longed to find his family again. As he flew around the lake again and again, he looked anxiously for the familiar flowery bush, hoping to find his home. Back under the flowery bush, Mother Duck was feeling very sad. She still missed her dear little gray duckling very much, and she was beginning to think she would never see him again. Just then, a magnificent white swan landed near the nest and began walking over to her. The swan was so big and strong, Mother Duck became frightened. The swan noticed she was frightened, and he knew just what to do. Lovingly, he slowly lowered his head and gently rubbed his soft cheek feathers against the old mother's cheek. Then he brought her and the whole family under his soft, warm, beautiful wings. With that, Mother Duck knew. Oh, she just knew. Her lost little swan had finally come home. As the sun set behind the flowery bush, all the animals of the lake gathered around to look in amazement at this beautiful family. Most of the animals were very happy, but a few of them felt very ashamed. They were sorry that they had treated him so badly when he was smaller, simply because of the way he looked. To Mother, it didn't matter how he looked before, and it didn't matter how he looked now. To her, the only thing that ever mattered was for her son to be safe and for her son to be home. And that's the end. I'm so glad you came to spend time with me today. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.